has never been a more important time to move in a vegan direction. Whether you're ready to start, restart, or re-energize your vegan or plant-based practice, this podcast is for you. I'm Michelle Olander, life coach, vegan, ADHD matriarch, travel lover, and smoothie loather. And I know that it's the details that get in the way of your vegan journey. But I like to believe that the obstacle is always the way. So every week we meet here where I translate the tools of life coaching and Stoic philosophy. I bring you actionable tips, some laughs, interesting guests, and vegan ideas for everyone at any age. All to help you veg your best. Episode 222, Rebel Vegan Life with Todd Sinclair, travel, books, and Veganuary. Home stretch, my veg your bestie. Home stretch. We're in December 3rd, when this episode drops. And here in the Northern Hemisphere, I'm feeling that the days are absurdly short right now. And every year right about now, I remember a poem my mother would trot out around this dark season. We're nearer to spring than we were in September. I heard a bird sing in the dark of December. Anyway, to light up your December, I have a star for you today in the vegan firmament, Todd Sinclair. You may know him as the Rebel Vegan at Rebel Vegan Life on Instagram and rebelveganlife.com. Todd is the author of the Rebel Vegan trilogy of books. He's a riveting speaker and a welcoming ambassador to vegan living wherever you find yourself. Todd's journey starts on a Canadian family dairy farm, winds through Asia as a tour leader. He finds himself recuperating from illness in a Buddhist monastery in northern Vietnam on a plant-based diet. And upon finding his travel work at a standstill during COVID, Todd Sinclair reinvents himself as a best-selling vegan author. It's practically cinematic. And today, Todd is here to share his enthusiasm and activism with us during this run-up to Veganuary, a.k.a. Vegan January. And let's not waste another minute. I'll see you on the other side. Todd Sinclair, the Rebel Vegan, welcome to Veg Your Best.
Thank you. Wonderful to be here, Michelle.
I really appreciate you moving your schedule around for me this last few days, and I'm delighted to listen to you. You are such a personality in our vegan world, and I just am so happy to be able to share you with my listeners.
Oh, it's wonderful to be here. And I know that I've definitely found a whole community within the vegan community here in the UK as well. So I very much feel a part of something, a movement, but also just, I've met so many wonderful friends that, you share a connection instantly, don't you?
Absolutely. And, I think sometimes people who are on the outside maybe or new to the kind of idea of moving in a plant-based or vegan direction think it's a very tough crowd, that we're very yes. Judgy. We all have our moments, but we're very judgy. But I think we're such a welcoming group.
Oh, absolutely. I think that kind of, it's very much that image of the vegan as being kind of humorless and, kind of extreme is there, but it's not the reality of at least what I found in the vegan scene. I found just a lot of, I'm actually, as you know, I think writing a vegan joke book. There's a lot of humor. There's a lot of self-deprecation. There's, we have to have that as a community. So I just think that being part of the community has lifted me up, and it's been amazing. But I do know that there is that, we're almost fighting that stereotype, aren't we? And I think ultimately the vegan scene is the most embracing scene I've seen, and most open to differences as well. Because there's people of all ages and ethnicities and sexualities and everything else. And that's the great thing. We have a shared kind of outlook or philosophy about, doing the least harm But otherwise, it's just, these are people from everywhere and from all backgrounds. And that's what's so wonderful. So there's a lot less judgment and within it is what I find, and just really embracing.
And you were not born vegan.
Oh my goodness, no. I always say I was born on the other end of the spectrum. I was born on it was a mixed use farm in Eastern Canada, a place called Prince Edward Island, but primarily dairy cattle. So there were hundreds. Yeah. I used to, as a child, be out there running around the fields with the dog and, basically bringing the cows in twice a day and things like that, bringing in the hay and the straw and doing other things that, now looking back is almost shocking, but yeah, so like I say, the other end of the spectrum, I was immersed in animal agriculture, that whole culture and industry. So yeah, it's been from one end of the spectrum, I always say, to the other.
But it's so interesting because part of what is interesting to me about your work is you are interested in food systems. And
Yeah.
for good or bad, animal agriculture has been part of our food systems as a developing species on this earth. We can talk about the extreme to which it's gone to in terms of our treatment of animals. But it's part of our culture. And it's something that has made life a little bit tricky for many people who really want to move in a vegan or plant-based direction. And it feels so part of their culture. And that's one of the reasons I really wanted you to chat with us today, because I think you are someone who's just thought deeply about it.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I think, everything's kind of working against us in that sense. The food systems are very established and, they've been in place really since it really kind of happened after the Second World War with food scarcity and things like that. And then they really buckled down and the farming community really got in with government. And it's really hard to get around that because they've got, huge budgets for promotion and for undermining anything that might be plant-based related and putting out kind of misleading information and studies that are backed by the farming lobby, or the animal agriculture kind of industry. And so everything becomes, this, they're almost generating. I would say I compare it to kind of the tobacco industry and lobby in the kind of 70s and 80s, and how they set out and fought that, what was happening with more and more restrictions or more awareness of people of health issues and what everything's about. So it really is. The food systems are huge, and it's something though that I talk about. I do talk about the future of the food systems, and that's really interesting because there's a lot of different forces coming together now that will unpick some of their dominance, the meat lobby. And a lot of those aren't ethical, so even though as a vegan, we're coming from an ethical, often standpoint that, we want to cause less harm but this will come likely from other poles, financial, economic, environmental poles. The food system has got, something's got to give. And it's a really interesting time, I think. So it's something that I really like to read about. And even the future of cell-based meat, that is something that I know is a little unnerving to people and causes anxiety. But potentially, if that's scaled up and scaled up well, it could alleviate, billions of sentient animals' lives every year. So there's so many things happening right now. So it's just a really interesting time out there. And the fact that I have to be a little bit sensitive. The fact I come from a farming background, family, culture, that is kind of, it's hard. I remember when I wrote my first book, which is kind of the why veganism matters, really, and that kind of deep dive. Of course, my background and where I came from was very relevant. And so I brought that in, but it was very difficult, and it's a sensitive one because these are, my family, and I'm almost challenging my whole heritage. And but it was an important part of the story that, that I understood that perspective as well. And I'm not just anti-farming or that kind of take on it, but that, why things have to shift. So my background complicated things at first, but I think gives me a bit more of an insight and maybe authority when I'm going forward about trying to inspire people or talk about some of the issues.
Because we've all inherited something of that
Yes.
sort, right? Almost all of us were raised by parents who would have done anything they could for us. And what they did was give us animal products because they thought they were doing the
Oh,
best thing they could.
absolutely. Look at the FDA, the food department. They've been putting out misleading, like now in hindsight, we can look, but I think a lot of us as children can remember that plate, that round symbol where, it was broken up into protein and all the different things, and how meat was such a prominent one in milk. So animal products was, what was promoted as the healthy. It was, I would say, it was promoted as kind of necessary, nutritional, all those ends, natural.
Normal. Yeah.
Yes. I think Michelle Joy talks about that, and she's wonderful at that as well. And and so anyway, yes, it was just something that, to tear all that down. We're brought up with this thinking, and that was very much me. It was like, the way of the world. I knew I was uncomfortable with some of the farming practices, and as a child, I some of it, I shied away from and had a real difficulty with. But I was fully immersed and thought this is the way of the world, and there wasn't a way beyond or past that. And it wasn't until I could get out in the world and kind of explore other things. So when you're coming from that background, absolutely, it's very hard to kind of get your head around that you have been misled and maybe conned. There's a bit of, I even say, I was definitely kind of made to feel like this, you should be promoting this. You should be part of this industry. This is like a good thing. This is about feeding the world, feeding the country, feeding the people. And to unpick that is uncomfortable,
Yeah.
'cause for me anyway, I felt implicated a little bit, there was all those things coming up. I remember when I was writing my first book, how strong it was, because I was actually putting it down on paper, some of the things I did. And they were even coming back to me. Some things I even forgot. And I was having like literally dreams or slash nightmares that some of these things, that I was helping dock the cows and do, as a boy, I was certain tasks I had to do. So some of those things came back to haunt me. And all of it came up again. And I kind of realized, I have to make peace with that as well. So we all have that, brainwashing. There's a little bit of brainwashing there, and it's a cultural thing as well. I think about, in the North America, you have Thanksgiving, Christmas, all those annual holidays, family events. It's about a meal, isn't it? It's about breaking bread, coming together. And usually at the center of that, sadly, is something that to me represents, suffering and exploitation. There's an animal, a dead creature at the middle of all these celebrations. That's really harsh, but that's the reality. So to try to challenge that, because we all want to belong. That's such an important part of being human, belonging. And your family unit is one of the most important ones, that you start with, and then your other friendship groups and communities and family. It's really hard to kind of make something as integral as your food, which brings people together. You don't want to be, our nature isn't to be contentious. So there's good ways of doing it that I've learned, instead of just, good ways of kind of allowing people to understand where you're coming from, letting them in, understanding your story, and not just, some sort of headline or, I demand this. It's like there's a reason, there's a story. But it was really, it took a long time. And now my family, and interestingly enough, when I go home to Canada, enjoy making, finding new things that I can eat with them, and understanding why I've done this. And also how important it is to me. So they're now making, and then also, my sisters have young children, nieces and nephews. They're learning from me, so they're like, wow, so you don't have any of this? And I say, no. And I'll explain it to them, and they find it endlessly fascinating. So now it's just become a thing that on the table, yes, there will be, when I go home, family, some people eating meat. There's me and a couple others now that have decided to mostly go, well, some of my family are mostly plant-based. They'll only eat, say, meat products when they're out at a restaurant. There's different ways people do it. And I'm totally understanding of that. Everybody's got their own journey and it takes time. But just by me being there and talking about it, and I think that's the important thing, by coming out, I always say, as a vegan and being present and being your authentic self and being, healthy and vibrant, that's the biggest promotional thing you can do.
100%. I totally agree. And and the people who are the most okay, there are obviously going to be some people who are just not going to ever be pleasant about it. That happens. That
No,
can happen.
no.
But most people, once they realize it matters to you. Like in the
Yeah.
beginning, people are like, okay, what's this week? What are you going to do this week? What's your
Yeah,
idea
yeah,
now? La,
yeah,
la, la. You're
yeah.
not going to make me do it, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
But once they see you actually living that way, and this is what people I think sometimes forget, that if it's important to you, you take care of you right now. You don't actually need all of them to go on board with you because they'll start to respect you when you respect your own choices that way.
And that's almost the attitude you come in with, that this, that this is important to me, and as long as you're open to sharing it and listening to other people. I often say that that is strong, though. That cognitive dissonance, as they say, is so strong. Like I often say, going to a dinner party as a vegan, you might be the only one sometimes, is that moment where you can ruffle feathers, you can make people feel uncomfortable, which is interesting because you're kind of holding a mirror up to them. A lot of people know the right thing is to likely reduce animal products for their health, for the environment. They're just kind of got a little bit, they're not comfortable with it yet, but they know that they want to do the right thing. They don't know how. And I could see it. I can see sometimes it comes out almost as a little bit, there's a friction there. They'll challenge you a little bit. And being, you have to be a little bit strong and ready to answer that, but in a very, understanding way that everybody is on this journey and they are struggling with this. They're getting so much different signals and information, so many pulls and pushes. I don't want to project. It's hard not to sometimes, but you don't want to project and just judge people. I want to get them excited. So just by being there and saying how wonderful this journey has been for me, I often say that, it's almost like becoming your authentic self. You're taking away some of these layers that have been put on you that, we're meat eaters, that this is important, that, this is that brings us together. And you're stripping that down and you're finding what you really like. Like to me, a lot of people see veganism as restrictive, which I find interesting. And I can understand that in some perspective. But to me, it was never restrictive. It opened up my world. That was the thing, because all of a sudden I've been carrying this around and I let that go and I could explore new things. I said, I want to try new flavors. I was traveling at the time and worked in Southeast Asia. So it was just an incredible time to be able to kind of go into, I had restaurants I knew. I used to take tours through Southeast Asia and they would explore with me some plant-based ideas, taking something that, would be traditionally have a piece of meat in it and let's put something else in it. Let's make it something new. But and that was just so exciting. So everything, all of a sudden, my palette, what I like now is so much bigger and wider, and I'm excited to try new things. It can be very lazy, I think, to be a meat eater. To be, you grow up with your diet, and there's the meat, potato, two veg, often, or rice or whatever. And you can go through life kind of it's kind of bland. It's kind of what it's the safety of it. I understand. But as soon as I let that go, wow. And still now I'm trying new things. I'm excited about it. That's definitely kicked in. That was so wonderful.
So, one of the things you found when you were traveling in Southeast Asia, you found other structures, other normals that did not privilege the piece of meat in the middle, the large amount of meat in the middle of the
Yeah.
plate. And you were actually with some spiritual communities there, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it started with that. I mean, I knew this, ironically, I knew this community. It was when I was ready to engage with them, I suppose. And that's a lot of our stories, isn't it? So I traveled throughout that region and a couple places I had different tours. I had a motorcycle tour through the country outside of Hue in Vietnam. And we stopped at a monastery. Um, and one of our guides was associated with the monastery, and we stopped and they cooked us a vegan lunch as part of this day. And I did it all the time, and I got to know them and really enjoy their company, but in kind of a superficial way. And then when I became ill, and it was after I'd done a food tour, ironically, in this city and with my group, and I became very, very ill, and like food poisoning, more than extreme than I ever had, and I had to kind of come off the road for a couple of days. And it was this community, my guide, whose brother was a monk, he said, come with me into the hills and we'll get you better. And we went back to this monastery, who I'd never stayed at, I've only visited, and I literally stayed for 4 days. And they nurtured me back to health on a plant-based diet, and but also talked to me about, when we sit there and talked about my life a little bit. That was the helpful bit. And they really explained, to them, it was almost like a spiritual thing, that you don't want to ingest and put into you something that comes from suffering and pain, and exploitation, and not to even have that something you're part of, because then you're part of that cycle. You're creating it by the demand. You're creating harm, pain in the world just by your choices, 3 times a day, your meal choices. You can cut that off. And to them, as a community, that was so important to them. And I felt lighter. I don't consider myself overly spiritual, but that infused me with something. And I was feeling lighter and healthier instantly. Obviously, the sickness, they got rid of that, but also it really gave me, I don't know, a direction and a sense of purpose. And then as soon as you make that connection, and that was it for me. I thought about it. I had vegan friends and I was learning about it, but I was still kind of living with my cognitive dissonance, which people can their whole lives. That moment was a eureka moment. And I was like, right, okay, this makes sense to me now. I don't want to cause undue suffering, unnecessary suffering, pain in the world. This is the best way to do it. And then all the other factors, don't get me wrong, are very, very important, the environmental side of things and ethic, but it just was so clear to me, and I could see them, and how, they just almost exuded this calm, peaceful gentleness. And it was something that I went, okay, this makes sense to me. I don't want to cause unnecessary suffering. And I made, there's no way of me to hide from it. This is something I have to do now.
I think that's so important, because until you see it's possible, it's impossible, right? It's just not possible.
Absolutely.
Until you can see that somebody's actually able to do it.
Yes. And I think that's the thing as well, is that, we all have busy lives, and it's hard because, people think, oh my goodness, it's such a big thing. I think it's a lot easier now in the West. I know every time I go to the supermarket, there's a plant-based product launch. And that's wonderful and exciting. As a vegan, obviously, you want to try that thing and what can I do with it? But regardless of that, it's just that people, their diet is something, we eat on the go, we go and we do things. And it's very hard to kind of think, let's rethink this part of my day. But as soon as you do, I know, like I even did really simple things. I call them almost gateway drugs. Is like the Beyond Burger, this, whatever you need to use to kind of, while you're learning, is really handy as well. But oh yeah, as soon as you make that deep connection, okay, this is something I want to do, you can do it. You know what I mean? There's enough out there, and that's what inspired my books in a way, during COVID, the deep dive into that, the why it's important, all the different areas, and not just the main ones, the kind of the 3 pillars, I call them, the environment, the ethics, and health, your health, the world health. There is other things, the social element of people who work in that industry and the way they're treated. And, there's the spiritual side of it as well, if you want to tune into that we've just spoken about. There's so many things that kind of come together. And then also the interesting thing, as soon as you do make that kind of connection, and it really is a deep thing, and you're going to go for it. That's a wonderful moment as well. And then everything else, the things you've kind of been pushing away and blocking out because it's almost too much noise, then all of a sudden everything fits, it falls into place. I don't know if it was the same with you. It's kind of like all of a sudden your algorithm is sending you all this information, helping you with that decision. It might be a recipe. It might be an article about a new study that's come out about how impactful a plant-based diet is, or, and everything is kind of just, like I say, slots into place, and you move forward. And it's, to me, like I say, it was just opened up my world.
What you're saying about it open your world, I see this all the time with people when they move in a vegan direction. Suddenly things become possible for them that they didn't even
Yes.
think about. Among things like your trilogy, you took
Yeah.
you just became a publisher of your own books too, right?
Yes.
So where did that come from? It comes because you suddenly have this, I think what you're saying, this freed
Yes.
up energy. What is it I want to do in the world?
I think even like that social cognizance is likely a little bit more exhausting than we realize, or a little bit that, like you're just open to it. Whereas before you're kind of ignoring things that are uncomfortable because you don't really want to know the science right now, because you're going to, going out to dinner with your friends and like you're going to have a big meat feast of some sort. So that all of a sudden, all that's gone. And let's everything that comes your way, you're open to, you're able to read it, you're not hiding from a thing. And that's really powerful. And I remember, like, yes, when I was in Asia, working on the road, where I became vegan, like I say, in Vietnam, they, from there on, I started writing. It was like I had so much to say. And that was the interesting thing. I used to have this, as part of one of my tours, I used to go up the Mekong River, and it was like 2 days, and it was called the slow boat. And there was no Wi-Fi, there's no distractions. You're on this slow moving boat going up the Mekong with the, beautiful landscape. There'd even be, one morning we always saw elephants on one bank. It was incredible. But I always write during that time, and I'd sit down with, gently the river kind of in this, the scenes going by me. And I started writing a vegan travel book. Didn't know what it was going to be called. I just started writing my tips because I thought I've learned so much in the last couple months just on the road, about different reactions, different ways, different things that work well and things that don't work well. And really it was inspiring. And also the people I connected with, I would have had relationships with, these restaurant owners. They're used to me coming through town, and they want to keep me happy because I usually have 15, 16 people with me. But also we've created, developed friendships and connections, which was wonderful. And all of a sudden I come through town the next time. I was only there a month ago, and I come through and they're used to me and they usher me in, and they get excited. Oh, here's your favorite meal, and here's a coconut, and da, 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 da. And I was like, oh, I have to break it to them. Things have changed. And very early on, I remember once someone did bring a meal right in front of me, and I had to kind of go, oh, because it was so nice of them and so kind. And, to them, this is an exciting moment. I'm back. And I was very sensitive to that. And I had to go and speak to them, explain what had happened to me, that I came off the road from eating, some meat, some dodgy meat. And then I had this kind of awakening, and this is why it's important to me. And instantly, as soon as I know it's important to me, they're like, okay, let's cook and show us. Can we use that? Of course you can use that. Let's take that in. We could use this jackfruit instead of that. And some of them even created special recipes. Like they would call it the Todd special. They would chuck it on there. And it just showed me that there's such an incredible way of doing it. And then when I started writing this on the road, because I'd learned so much, it was literally, sometimes I didn't even have pen and paper. It would be in my iPhone notes. I'd be go, oh, I got an idea for this is really important. But I never had the time to bring that together because I was on the road. So there were like loose bits. I remember I even wrote an introduction. I was quite excited, but it just kind of stayed there, evolved a little bit, but didn't get anywhere. And then COVID happened. And I went, wow, I'm a very out there social person. All of a sudden, I'm locked away for months at end. And I said, let's take out those notes. Let's see. This was always something that, this is important to me. It's still, and I thought COVID, wow, this was a turning point for the world as well. Where we're looking in, we're being reflective. That to me shifted things. To me, vegan values is what I call them, came to the fore during COVID, whether it's our own personal health, global health, our relationship with other beings, animals, all those things, the social implication of how it meets everything. Just COVID, just to me, highlighted vegan values. So that's what I really did was during those months alone is research, write, take my old notes. And that was the basis of my vegan travel guide, Veganism on the Go, which was ironically my third book that was published because I kind of pushed it to the end. I thought, no, that's for later. Right now, we need a foundation. We need to understand and get out there why veganism matters as an important issue for all of us, and to make that connection. And then that led into kind of a more cookbook, how to do it well, which was my second book. And then the third one was that travel guide that I started likely 4 years or 5 years earlier, and it was just this thing. And then that led to, they did well and people seemed to like them. So then all of a sudden I became this kind of public figure, and I enjoy speaking at different events and meeting and really getting, I think when I came out of COVID, it's like I had a ready-made community. I couldn't wait to try these vegan restaurants, and people have maybe read my book, so they want to, get me to try different things. And it was just this incredible time. And the vegan community here in the UK and around the world, because, in my Instagram page and everything else, we're part of that whole journey. They saw me writing and publishing the next book. And, some of them have been with me that whole journey. So now going out there into the world, I feel like I do have so much support and such a strong community who wants the best for me and raises my voice up. And it's just been a wonderful journey.
So we have Veganuary, which I believe began in the UK, and I believe right around 2012 or 2014. I can't remember.
2014 was the first year, yes, and that is just an incredible success story. If any, it's easy, I think, as being vegan, to get a little crushed by the people. Sometimes the message doesn't seem to be getting out there, and we're like, oh. It's going to be a little crushing, a little soul destroying that, our families aren't listening. But you know what? The world is starting to listen, I do think. And Veganuary is such an inspiration. And I met Jane and Matthew Glover and Jane Land, who started it in their kitchen table, sitting around with this idea 10 years ago. And they started it in 2014. They had 3,000 people here in the UK who signed up, which was impressive. And they were like, wow, 3,000 whole people, our little thing that we've devised here. And this year, 2024, 10 years later, they had 25 million people around the world sign up. So in 10 years, a decade, to go from 3,000 people here in the UK, like I say, still wonderful, to 25 million people around the world is, I think, mind-blowing. And I interviewed them just a month and a half ago. We had a vegan party conference here, which is very much the vegan community coming together, talking about, some of the things that have worked, inspiring each other, our ideas, where we're going next. It was just a really powerful thing because it wasn't about trying to sell it to the outside world or, selling vegan products. It was just us coming together, various, community leaders and speakers and writers and everybody coming together and sharing ideas. Anyway, I, on stage one day, had the privilege to interviewing Jane and Matthew from, and they shared that story with me and their highs and lows going through it. And I think it's because I think it's something like, I think it was 35 or 37% kept who entered and did the month-long in January of vegan diet, kept it, and which is a huge success. And almost the majority, 80% or 80-something%, reduced their meat intake. So there's an impact for a huge percentage of those. So if there's 25 million people doing it, that's 25 million people sharing their story. It's changing their lives. Changing the lives, the ripple effect is huge. So I'm really excited about it. This year will likely even be bigger. They do a wonderful job. In America, is it something that is known as a,
Oh yes. Oh yes.
yeah?
I do think, I live in right now a little bit of a vegan bubble in my world now. So in my
Yeah.
world it is much more well known. But I of course run into people all the time that I say Veganuary and they're like, well, that's a kind of a tortured way, a Veganuary. And
Yeah,
I
yeah, yeah.
agree that it's a success with that name is really awesome. It's just amazing.
That whole campaign has taken off away, and it just allows people, because everybody in the new year kind of wants to get their house in order. And it's just a really powerful month anyway to take stock and to rethink. So it very much lends itself with that whole kind of ethos of the, trying to improve and start on the right foot. And the fact that it is changing lives. So yeah, that's a big thing here. The fact it started here, maybe we're a bit proud of that as well. And actually Matthew Glover, who was him and Jane, the founders, he just made a notice that he's applying to be the leader of the RSPCA here in the UK, the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals. And traditionally, that's always been about domesticated, not farm animals, but pets, companion animals. And, they go out there, if there's something, cats and dogs generally being mistreated, and they've done a very good job at that over the last 200 years. And they've ignored the majority of domesticated animals, which are the farmed animals, which is something like 90%, which is likely the same in the United States and Canada and most countries, most Western countries. And because that's a much more contentious, that becomes political. Everybody wants their cats and dogs, and we respect that. But, to go in there as such a prominent vegan and to try to work with the biggest organization, the biggest animal protection organization here in this country, and the oldest in the world. The original Animal Protection Society and oldest in the world is our one here, the RSPCA. And to take it in a whole new direction, I think we're ready for that. We should not just have one set of standards of how we treat domesticated animal companions, pets, but also the other domesticated animals that we domesticated over many centuries, and looking at how we treat them. And there should be better standards, because a lot of it is almost, ethic washing, putting up they have an assured farming scheme, which kind of hides a lot of things. So this Matthew Glover, incredible man, like I said, started Veganuary and is now setting his sights on the biggest animal rights organization in this country. So that gives me hope as well.
Well, that is a piece of news I learned from your Instagram not so
Yeah.
long ago. I mean, that not really recently. And
Yes, I was just last week, because it's just come out. He's just let me know that this is all happening. And he's being very public about it, because it's almost like a challenge to the RSPCA, because they've had some bad press, because there's been a lot of undercover operations here in the UK exposing, these supposedly, assured farming schemes that have been RSPCA certified as, having high standards, and going in there and showing some of the incredible abuse. And this is supposed to be the ones that are the highest standards. And it's terrible. Like, the Guardian newspaper here in the UK has printed and exposed some of it as well. So they're at a stage where it's time now. We can't ignore the way the bulk of the animals that we've domesticated as humans are the way they're being treated. And it's exciting news here in the UK, and hopefully it'll, inspire other people everywhere.
well, all the conversation you mentioned a few minutes ago, the ripple effect, of one person making a vegan choice each time it's made in public, in a family context. It does ripple. There is no question. And sometimes some of us require more ripples than others.
Oh my goodness. And
It took me a while.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I think most vegans, there's like a shared kind of regret amongst vegans, and that one regret that I think is, quite universal, is that I wish I'd done it sooner. We wish we had done it sooner, but we all need to be ready. And so I've stopped doing that. And I say to people, that's fine. You weren't ready earlier. You needed a little more time. You need something to fall into place. And I know with me, I was exploring it. I was intrigued by it. I was kind of ignoring my past because, I had, I always say I grew up where, violence was normalized in a big degree. The animals and the little calves I used to play with would eventually be killed. And so it was pretty brutal in that sense. I kind of blocked all that out. I moved on with my life, but I needed time to kind of rethink that, kind of think, well, okay, what is my motivation? What's important to me? A lot of different things had to come together for me to make that decision. And it did happen to me kind of in a really unique setting, but everything came together at that time. I was sick, I was being nurtured back to health, and I could kind of see different strands of my life and what's important to me and how I wanted to reconfigure things. And it gave me that time and space to do it and to bring it together, to make the connections. And that's the important thing. So I wouldn't be hard, like, as vegans. I think we all need time to get to that place.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you have a very welcoming website, a welcoming Instagram, your entire media, your books, everything's very welcoming. And so to respect your time, so we don't take advantage of you too much.
I'm
We've
enjoying
got this Veganuary coming up, looming up. Is there something that you would, with all this research you've done, is there some recommendation you might have for people who see, I believe in a runway to things. I don't believe in like saying, oh, I'll start that Monday or I'll start that January 1st. I always think we should kind of lean into it a little bit early to just maybe we, separate something in our minds about what we could be adding in instead of taking out. Is there something you would recommend that would make Veganuary maybe a little bit more fun or impactful for people who haven't moved there yet?
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, that's what you want to make it fun. And that's the thing. You don't want this to be like, oh my goodness, this is going to be this month. How will I get through it? I wouldn't even start with that. And I think your idea of that runway of getting yourself excited. You're going to go out on a little adventure here. You're going to find some new things to eat. You're going to, try if you get on Happy Cow, find your closest place that has a really good vegan menu. Hopefully you might even have a vegan cafe you didn't even know, or a restaurant, with driving distance or close by. But you'll definitely have restaurants and cafes that'll have incredible vegan options. They might not be the ones you've been going to, but then that's a wonderful kind of reason and to go out and to try something new. And there's got to be people around you. I always say, we don't live in isolated. No man's an island type thing. You've got to have people around you. So I know some people kind of keep it shy and they kind of want to just tentatively try it. I would say that I don't usually see that working. I would say the people you trust that are near you. And I know that everybody has their own situation, is to share that I'm going to do this. This is important to me. And then if they are good people around you, and hopefully everybody does, they'll support you. They'll go, wow, okay, that sounds really interesting. They're in with you. They'll maybe want to go to the vegan restaurant and try this with you. And then you're not just on your own, because I think that's the thing. We all need community. And you'll find that there's also, so one side is the people around you, your loved ones, your trusted ones. You should be able to bring them in and get them excited for you and backing you. And the other one is the community that's out there that you've not yet met. Go onto some forums. It could be Facebook. Facebook groups are great because most everyone has Facebook, but there's tons of other, blogs, forums, places. If you do a quick search, in the back of my book, I have all my books. I do a huge resources of all the different places you can go around the world for vegan communities, vegan networks, and everything, like different vegan literature. I would go in there and go, if you're going to do Veganuary, I would, I have all my favorite books that touches on animal themes and inspiring, not just heavy tomes of scientific literature. I mean, inspiring movies and books, and really get into it, do the deep dive, embrace it, see it as an adventure, because that community is out there as well. You'll likely make some links, go out there, send some messages. I'm going to try this. And I can imagine the vegan community I know, you'll get back so much positivity, so much. You'll be embraced and supported as well. You'll find a whole new community. And it's just about getting out there and doing it. It's one of the most wonderful things I've ever done in my life. And I've done a lot.
So, Todd, tell me about your new book. So that's good. We're going to tell everybody to lean into Veganuary a little early. Don't be
Yeah.
quiet about it. Don't hide it, because I think sometimes people think, "Oh, we're going to I might not be able to stick with it. I might fail at it." And yeah, you might. But what if you just kept reorienting back for the month? Just keep trying again. Try something else
No,
again for the
absolutely.
month.
And I wouldn't want that to make anyone not do it, that they're scared they might. Listen, if something happened and there's some event and there's, your family are under pressure, things happen. I don't like the judgment side of things. You know what I mean? We all have our own kind of story, our own journey. And I wouldn't judge you. I often say that everybody needs to get there at in their own way, their own pace, so it does all click together, make sense. But and if this Veganuary isn't the one, then maybe you could try it another month. You're there, you're thinking, you're engaging with it, you're aware, and that's the most important thing. You don't have your head in the sand anymore.
Mm.
You're out there. You want to make change. You've just got to get all the factors right.
Mm. So this leads me to the book you've redone, right?
Yeah.
Tell me everything.
But what it is when like I say, when I originally I started writing a book on the road in Asia, and when COVID happened to us, and I was kind of, all of a sudden I was flying back from Asia in my shorts, confused what's happening. I didn't know how long this would last. When I realized it would last a long time, I dragged out those notes and then realized, no, I've got more than this in me. And I really wanted to start, because like I say, I think COVID changed everything, with this deep dive into why veganism matters. And to make it fun and have lots of personal stories as well. So it's, I often think that, to me, I think lots of little stories within the bigger narrative works well. So I really wanted that. So it's really easy to pick up and just read one story in 2 pages and go, wow, that's inspiring. And that was the first book. I said, this is important. Before I get to the other aspects about vegan travel and lifestyle, let's go here. And now other people have done it, but not post-COVID kind of analysis, and taking in a lot of other things that have shifted and changed. So that first book, and then the second one came off of that, was kind of more about how to do veganism. So the why and the how, with some recipes and tips and inspirational stories. They always they complement each other. And I decided recently, let's bring them together as one book, update all the science. I added a chapter and brought it fully up to date for this year, because the science is changing all the time, as you know, and there's more kind of, it's coming together, almost reinforcing everything. So I just brought it up to date, brought the why and the how. So it really covers the whole thing. It's kind of like the perfect kind of inspiration, starter, everything together. And so the 2 books, my first 2 books, the why and the how of veganism, and it's called Exposing Deception and Embracing Truth. And I just, to me, it's kind of like everything together in one volume. Everything, all my passion, everything I've learned. And so I just done and re-edited, and it's out now.
That's great. So it's Exposing Deception, Embracing Truth.
Yes.
Todd Sinclair,
Yep.
sometimes called London Todd. And because honestly, you live in such an easy place, even if places are in London don't have a arching idea of veganism, you can get marvelous vegan options almost anywhere in London. I found my husband and I were engaged. My dad grew up in London, and we got engaged in London, and we go often, and it just makes, if you're just like tired, you don't want to have a fight with anybody about your food, go to London if you're vegan.
Gosh, yeah. We are, and I recognize that. We're very, very lucky here. And generally in the whole country, but London specifically, there's often a new vegan place even opening. I take a lot of my non-vegan friends were like, oh, can we go to Mildred's? Can we go here, to a vegan place, a well-known vegan place? Because I know the food is always exceptional.
Yeah.
And you're almost slowly winning over other people because there is just so much gorgeous food and support out there. I've been to a few new vegan places recently. So we are very lucky. But what I would say is even traveling, like I traveled everywhere, a lot of places, find a convenience store. And I even have some hacks about, getting some simple vegetable soup and how what you can do with that. And, wherever you are, there's a way to do it. But definitely the world is changing a lot. And I think in the United States as well, when I was there last, I was impressed. I always go into supermarkets and I say, what do they have? Let's find the vegan section. Isn't that interesting? You can kind of judge where a culture or a community is on that journey.
Yeah, the supermarkets are leading the way, I think,
Yeah.
even though my husband still eats fish. And he popped into a restaurant recently without me because he said, I'm going to check what their vegan options are for you there. And he said he asked about all of them
Yeah.
and he found, and this is in Rhode Island. It was not, it's not, in the middle of cow country somewhere. I mean, and they were like, completely confused, like, oh, well, how
Wow.
about shrimp? And he was like, no, no,
Oh,
no, no.
not
It
quite
was like,
vegan enough. Yeah. Oh my goodness. Some of the things I've heard. Yeah. What about chicken? Chicken's not really meat. I'm like,
right.
yes. Incredible.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Well, I think what's happened here, and I've seen the shift only a few years, maybe 5 years ago, actually. Just around 2019 was a real time here where veganism was like the top searched word. And I think around the world, veganism kind of reached that plateau. Everybody was kind of talking 2019, 2020. And now there's been a bit of pushback, actually. And that's been interesting as well. I think the meat industry has pushed out a lot of, adverts, the classic one with the Beyond Burger and a 100% beef burger, and trying to get people kind of worried about the ingredients and the in plant-based products. So, they've been very successful in pushing back. But and so things but supermarkets really, they should be the ones, we should be asking them for stuff. We should be pushing for more plant-based stuff, clear labelings and all those things. But I think here in the UK, things just kind of shifted around then. And now every restaurant's expected to have a plant-based option. And that wasn't the case, I think, about 5 years ago. Before then, seriously, a lot of restaurants wouldn't need to be bothered. But now it would be highlighted and pointed out. It's kind of the done thing. And I'm hoping that other places where you are also are getting to that point where it's kind of a shameful thing not to have on your menu. Whatever, you could be a steak restaurant to have at least one, if not two vegan options. That's what we've kind of got here. And we're very fortunate.
Yeah, well, it's also a vegan veto from a business point of view. If my family,
Yes.
maybe none of them is vegan except for me, but they're not going to go to a place where there's no vegan option. They're not.
No, no,
They're just
no.
not going to.
Yeah.
So they lose 12 people.
Yeah, no, and I love your expression vegan veto. I use that now. I heard you say that in one of your podcasts, I believe. And that's the thing, I have a big network of friends. Some are vegan, many aren't. But they're very mindful, and they would not meet at any event unless their vegan friends, were catered for, which makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I hope the word's getting out there. It definitely has taken hold here in the UK. Very happy to say. So come see me if anybody's somewhere where they can't get anything.
Exactly. Well, you are very welcome. I'm going to make sure everybody follows you on Instagram because you're back on
Yeah,
Instagram, right?
I am. I am. Rebel Vegan Life is my Instagram. And it's also, I believe, my TikTok and my Facebook. That's kind of my brand name, Rebel Vegan Life. And I try to send out little inspirational stories because that's really what it's to me about. I didn't want it to be just about harsh judgment. It's like, okay, what's all these wonderful stories around the world? Let's get them out there because
Mm.
there's so much. We're living in, there's been a lot going on in the world recently. It's easy to become negative. Let's try to, stay strong, send out some inspiration. We may be losing a few battles, but we're getting there.
Yeah.
It's kind of my messaging.
Yeah. And you have so many resources on your website. So people go on to your website, they're going to see all kinds of ideas for documentaries and books and websites.
Yeah.
And you had a couple apps on there that I did not know about, which I need to look at. I can't remember which one it was that I was like, I have to go
Maybe
back.
some of the travel. Yeah, there's incredible stuff out there to, live vegan, travel vegan, all of those things. And finding your community, like, we talked about people who may be, starting looking at Veganuary, but also just going out into the world. There's so many ways to meet vegans around the world now. Every time I travel, I look what's out there and I see there is a little community in the places you would not expect. In a little island in Thailand, there's a vegan meetup point and da 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 da. And the things you can find, and that's what I wanted to put in those resources. So please, have a look because there's a lot there.
Yeah. Todd Sinclair, thank you so much for sharing a little bit of Rebel Vegan life with us today on Veg Your Best.
Oh, it's been an absolute pleasure. And I wish everybody well and good luck with the new year and with everything ahead. Come connect with me on Rebel Vegan Life if you've got any questions, because I try to engage and answer things as well.
I know you do. That's great. People do reach out and pick Todd's brain.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you, Todd.
Wonderful. Thanks, Michelle. Bye-bye.
So, what did you think of Todd Sinclair from Rebel Vegan Life? If you or someone you know sometimes think that a vegan journey is harsh or joyless or constrained, I think all you have to do is listen to Todd. Did you hear him? Veganism has opened up my world, never restricted it. But the great thing is Todd does get it if you're not quite there yet. If there is still some friction in parts of your vegan journey, just keep going. Just keep going. That's exactly how you learn the skills and the comrades that you need along the way. Reach out. Don't do it on your own. There are so many of us in this amazing community who are ready to help. And Todd's resource-filled website, rebelveganlife.com, and of course his books are amazing places to start. And like so many of the people I speak with every day, our lives completely open up. We find ourselves capable of so much more when we take on this vegan practice. That's the real rebellion, isn't it? Living your life with energy and authenticity and freedom. And a personal thank you to Todd for being such a good sport, changing the date of our interview at the last minute. My schedule has had a mind of its own lately. And Veg Your Bestie, if you're someone like me who is very uncomfortable asking people to change things or reschedule things or ask for what you need or want, I, for one, totally get it. But when you are brave enough to give people the opportunity to help you or support you when you need that, it's actually a great honor you're giving them. So please share this episode with all the people you know who will love Todd, and follow him on Instagram. Read those books. So much careful research and thoughtful analysis in the Rebel Vegan Life books. I know you'll find it supporting and invigorating, and it's just one more way this winter you can veg your best. Veg Your Best podcast production, music, and editing by Charlie Weinshank. Thanks, Charlie. Before you go, it would mean so much to me and the Veg Your Best team if you would hit subscribe, leave us a 5-star review, or share with someone you think might be interested. Something about algorithms, it helps bump us up a little in the rankings, and that's the best way to help others find the podcast and for us to find our audience. So, until next week, make it easy and veg your best.